So let's get right down to it and talk about the Steam Deck OLED versus the ROG Ally. So the Steam Deck OLED is a 3-year-old handheld device, while the ROG Ally has been around for about 2 years. And if you didn't know this, I recently gave away my Steam Deck LCD for no particular reason at all. I just liked them enough to give them my Steam Deck LCD, and I thought the ROG Ally was a fine replacement until I received the Steam Deck OLED. And finally, after about a year, I decided to pick up the Steam Deck OLED. And so far, I'm absolutely loving this handheld device. SteamOS is snappier than ever, a lot snappier than it used to be with the LCD, mainly because the RAM speed on the Steam Deck OLED is faster. Of course, with the ROG Ally, it has the same RAM speed, just like the Steam Deck OLED, so you're going to get the same amount of speed, but SteamOS was made for the Steam Deck, and at the time of purchasing this, SteamOS wasn't available for handhelds like the ROG Ally and Legion Go. So I decided to pick this up because, well, I love the trackpads, the OLED HDR display, along with its 720p and 90Hz. So the main question is, after getting the Steam Deck OLED, which handheld do I prefer the most? And honestly, sometimes I'm split between the Steam Deck OLED and the ROG Ally. The ROG Ally has VRR, 120Hz, 1080p display, while the Steam Deck OLED is still 800p with an OLED HDR panel. The OLED and HDR kind of make the 800p look like 1080p sometimes. And you can't go wrong with an LCD 1080p panel like the Asus ROG Ally has. And it has the same panel as the ROG Ally X. So why would I prefer a Steam Deck OLED over an ROG Ally? Well, it's a lot more convenient, and SteamOS is made for the Steam Deck, but in theory, if you installed SteamOS on something like an ROG Ally, then it could be possible to get the same convenience on both devices. But for now, SteamOS 3.8 is actually compatible with handhelds like the ROG Ally and Legion Go, so that still brings up the question, which handheld would actually be more convenient and available to you? And I'd assume most people just wouldn't want to go through the trouble of installing SteamOS directly onto devices like this. The experience is not going to be perfect, such as updating the device on the ROG Ally seems to freeze it. But honestly, a PC gamer like me would prefer Windows 11 over Linux because Windows 11 has the best compatibility in the game, while Linux has compatibility issues across the board with a few dozen titles I can think of right off the top of my head. But of course, the Steam Deck OLED is one of my newest handhelds, so of course I'm going to play it more often. But after the initial honeymoon phase of the Steam OLED, I still have to ask myself, am I going to use the ROG Ally more? Well, naturally I am going to use it more, but I'm not going to enjoy Windows 11 because you can't get the compatibility of Windows 11 without the actual operating system. But with SteamOS, you can't get the convenience of SteamOS without Linux. So this is an unfortunate balance between the two handhelds. I think they're both the best mainstream handhelds on the market, and they both have something very important to offer: compatibility and convenience. If only those two can coexist. But for now, I'm going to have to pick between the Steam Deck OLED and the ROG Ally. And for right now, I'm going to have to go with the Steam Deck OLED, because most of my favorite titles are compatible with SteamOS, and all of the tools available for you on SteamOS, like plugins, themes, and with the Steam Store always being readily available to you, you're that much more connected to your Steam library and most likely your favorite video games, because most of my favorite titles are compatible and available for Linux and SteamOS. But of course, we're going to have some of those issues where games don't work for SteamOS, so sometimes I'm going to have to go with Windows 11 and its compatibility. And now with applications like Deck, which I will talk about later, and their compatibility with Windows 11, emulating games is now a lot more convenient on Windows 11, and I think the compatibility is also more prevalent on a Windows 11 handheld device like the ROG Ally. So of course I'm going to be torn between the two, but like I said before, the convenience is there with the Steam Deck OLED for now, because I haven't installed SteamOS on the ROG Ally, but I assume there's still some kinks to work out with the ROG Ally handheld, opposed to something that is more refined and optimized like the Steam Deck OLED. But yeah guys, which handheld would you prefer? Steam Deck OLED or ROG Ally? I'm still in the process of reviewing this handheld, but so far my experiences have been almost perfect. There were some mistakes made and trials here and there, but I think overall my experience with SteamOS has been greatly improved from about 2.5 years ago with my Steam Deck LCD. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Later.